can continue.
I was gonna ask, are you selling out of state?
Yes.
Can you give me a ballpark of what you sell, like yearly even, or?
It just depends on varietal.
Well, I was gonna ask maybe if you could even give me a varietal breakdown.
Percentage wise, obviously shiitakes are number one on the cultivated end. And they're probably 10 to 1. Wow. As far as sales of other the numbers wise. Second would probably be maitake. Third would be lion's mane, and oyster would probably be right along with it. As far as the cultivated, the typically cultivated mushrooms go. The medicinal area is completely different, and you would really need to have a customer base that's either doing nutraceuticals or some other kind of processing in another state. That's not something that we necessarily focus on, but we could facilitate getting product there if that's needed.
It's kind of surprising that shiitake is in such high demand when it seems like so many people are growing it. And do you think that's just because of the shelf life, or do people just love it that much?
I think it's really reasonably priced, as far as most mushrooms go. And so people are, you got to understand, you guys are in an elite group of folks that understand what mycology is about. Your average person, the average person only eats 30 different vegetables and fruits during their life in America. All right. So, you probably, most people in this room have eaten close to 30 different kinds of mushrooms. It's a completely different philosophy. People are working off of agaricus pricing, have been forever. Well, how come it's not, $1.49 a pound? That's expensive. And so you're working an uphill battle with education. Now, in the Northwest, we're blessed. We've got probably the most educated population of mushroom consumers in the United States. So, it is definitely catching fire. I've seen over the past 10 years, the amount is more than quadrupled of consumption. So, it's up, and it's going up every year consistently as people really start to understand the benefits.
What are you going to want to see as a wholesale buyer, and what do you think your clients are going to want to see with all of the production increases that are probably going to come the next few years?
I would say consistency. It's really, there's usually times of year, and you're looking at, mostly due to compost issues, where there's inevitable failure. I hate to say that, but I've seen the best and the biggest and the cleanest farms go down for long periods of time with production issues. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so, to have a large grower base necessarily isn't a bad thing. But I think that there's going to be there's competition out there already that's pretty immense when there's overproduction, and you can see prices dip down $1 a pound sometimes without just overnight, because the product's there and it needs to move. And so the laws of supply and demand sometimes dictate where people need to go on the pricing, and dictates what we can offer out to retailers to try and keep movement up. It's really hard, because when there's overproduction in the marketplace, then it's a race to the bottom, and you it's really hard to differentiate yourself as a grower when there's that much overproduction. So we just hope that the entire movement of the organics in general and mushrooms in general keep on going the way they are, which is up. And you're talking about 8 to 10% a year. But if production just comes on at 50% more in a single year, it'll definitely create ripple effects that people will feel in real dollars and cents.
Totally.
Sorry if I'm going in depth there. I'm just trying to be an open book.
Oh,
yeah, that's great.
I feel like we could just grill you with questions for a whole hour here, but I don't know if that's the best way forward. I mean, I have plenty more questions I'd like to ask, but I mean, do we want to, as a group, continue in this thread, or I'm happy to keep asking you questions if that's appropriate.
I'm loving the questions. I got one of my own, actually, if you don't mind, Brian. So consistency is key, is what you were saying, keeping up a consistent supply from the same farms. How does that play in for, like, say, outdoor operations like log grown shiitake or things like that, where it's a very seasonal output? Does that cause big price plunges in, like, the spring and the fall, or?
It can. How can I say this? We haven't seen. I have not seen real production from an outdoor facility for any more than 6 weeks at a time. And so, yeah, I think that there are interruptions within that marketplace, but it's really hard. I mean, if you've got a relationship with the store, you've got a really good, strong farmers market where you're at, obviously those are the things that are super important to exploit as much as possible, because you as small farmers need to keep every margin dollar that you can in your hands.
Yep.
I say that to every farmer. We're a wholesale distributor. We're the largest wholesale organic distributor in the US, but we love farmers markets, and we love the fact that farms are utilizing them because they need to survive. You need to be as differentiated as you possibly can. Now, if you're going into production growing, then you're going to come up against, like what you said, the outdoor product, different kinds of product, overproduction from specific farm here and there that are going to create interruptions. I think that you need to kind of plan on that, because you can see when the cycles are. If you're growing outdoor when your production's coming on, well, that's the same time that most of your other folks are coming on too, because it's really, these mushrooms aren't stupid. They're some of the smartest organisms there are on the planet. And they know when the weather changes outside. They're very temperature sensitive to hot and cold. They understand the dynamic of the difference between millet and other, protein. So I think that, as you dial it all in, you try and eliminate all your issues, but at some point, like I say, you're going to run into something, and overproduction is part of that ebb and flow. I'm sorry, I keep kind of going off here.
Oh, sorry. Is this everybody that's going to be joining the group today?
Yeah, I think it might be. I don't see anybody else.
Okay, I saw that you invited Bridgetown and Columbia, I thought, maybe in the email, but it's too bad they didn't show up. I thought it would have been cool to get some of their input.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping that we will, this will be the first of many meetings, right? And that we can continue to have at whatever interval folks feel comfortable with. And we have a little bit of that in our agenda for kind of like our next steps. This is a really great conversation, and I kind of structured this meeting a little bit differently than I think future meetings will be. I think like what we're doing now is probably going to be the bulk of what our next meeting is, where we're just having these great conversations and learning and information sharing. And Brian, thank you so much. You're such a huge resource for this group, and I think you're giving us a lot to think about. In terms of today, we do have a couple of presentations. I had a breathing exercise to get us all grounded in this space, but we're already there. So thank you, everyone. I love that we just like all immediately, kind of let go of what we were doing beforehand. And you can tell the passion with this group, which is really fantastic. Kind of some of the purpose pieces that I was thinking about when I was talking to Heidi about supporting the formation of an Oregon mushroom producer network was, how do we have support for one another? So maybe somewhere down the road, we put together a nonprofit organization that is the Oregon Mushroom Producer Network, and it is meant to facilitate growth and development of local producers. That includes advocacy. One of the things that I thought about was, with the rise in production of mushrooms in Oregon, maybe there's a potential to gain consumer awareness. Maybe there's a campaign to get more people to eat more mushrooms. And what does that look like? Vernonia is a mushroom producer who hopefully will get to join us next time, and they have a great brochure on the benefits of eating oyster mushrooms. So these types of things I think we could share with one another and help to ensure that the consumer market meets the production that we're able to come up with. Thinking about recipes and CSAs and things like that, and how could we partner on our CSAs so that we have a diversity of mushroom types. Group purchasing and information sharing were covered earlier. Some of the other things that come to mind are vacation covers, employee sharing. I know one of the mushroom producers that I spoke to was like, there's no way I can make this meeting. I just am working 80 hours a week right now, and I don't have enough employees. And so is there like this opportunity to help one another out there? And then also membership association with other groups. So I stumbled onto the Oregon Mycological Society. Is anyone a member of that now? Awesome. Do you want to share anything about the Oregon Mycological Society, and if it would be potentially a good opportunity for this group to connect with that group?
Oh, I think you're both muted right now.
Sorry, I'm joined, but I'm not like a board member or super active member. I joined just because of the Mount Pisgah thing every year, so that's kind of my connection with them. I don't really know where the synergies might be.
Anna, do you have a connection?
Yeah, so they are going to be tabling at our event in October. I can talk to them when they're out here, or maybe even before they arrive.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty great. I did include in our shared drive a document that has a list of resources. And so that was one of them that I would encourage you all to use the drive, right? So the Google Drive is a resource for all of us. So everyone is a full manager of the Google Drive, so you can add anything. I would ask that you don't delete things that other folks have added, maybe without having a conversation with people first. But yeah, I think it's a great kind of pool that we can all put our input into, with resources, with kind of any information and things like that that comes up. Yeah. And then obviously the purpose that y'all want. So, what do you hope to get from being a part of Oregon's Mushroom Producer Network? And, how could it be a benefit to you? I think is really important as well. And that's something that we could include with our priorities list on the Google Drive. With respect to time, I do want to turn it over to Morgan, who's joined us to talk about certification for mushroom production. When I sent out the survey, one of the top responses for things that people were interested in learning more about was, how do you get organic certified mushroom production? It's something that several of our peers have done throughout Oregon. And with the rise in concern over how our food is grown, I think that this is kind of a great opportunity. So with that, I might turn it over to you, Morgan, to walk us through organic certification.
Sounds good. All right, get my presentation here. Okay, can you guys confirm you can see my screen?
I can see it.
Yes, right. All right, so hi everyone, thanks for having me. I'm Morgan Kelley and I'm a senior farm certification officer over at Oregon Tilth. And today I'm going to run through some of the basics of organic certification and then some specifics related to the certification of mushrooms. And I'll start by saying that this is a really text-heavy presentation. There's a lot to cover on these topics. So I believe we've shared the presentation in that Google Drive that Emily was just referring to. So you guys will have it that you can go back and reference, and it'll have all my talking points as well.
Thank you.
I'll first talk about the NOP, or the National Organic Program, and give a basic overview of the regulatory structure. I'll then touch on some specific aspects of certification, such as the organic system plan, whether your activities constitute crop certification or handling certification, the differences in requirements for outdoor versus indoor mushroom production, and then finally the requirements for your materials used, so your substrates, growing media. And this will be about a 15-minute presentation, and so I'll leave time at the end for any questions that come up, so be sure you jot those down along the way. I've outlined the regulatory structure here in this graphic, but it's pretty dense and everything is intertwined. And so I'll focus from the NOP downward. And there's quite a few acronyms that we use, which is par for the course for government, I know, but having a little background on this structure can be really helpful in your journey. The NOP, which is part of the USDA, accredits third-party certifiers, either at the state level or as independent organizations. OTCA is an independent organization, to certify and verify that farms and processors are meeting the standards. The whole process and framework then in turn provides consumers with confidence in the integrity of the USDA organic seal. The organic regulations are detailed in this link I've provided here, so you can dive into that a little bit more on your own. And these regulations are the guiding principles that certified organic producers are required to follow. And it's our job as certifiers to enforce the standards and ensure producers are meeting the requirements of the regulation. And we do this through approving a submitted organic system plan, or OSP, and conducting mandatory annual inspections. One point to note here is that while we're discussing mushrooms today, the organic regulation outlines rules for crops and processors. So the NOP has yet to develop a specific set of standards for mushroom production. And so the requirements for certification fall under the crop portion of the standards, which would be the most applicable at the moment. The first thing to consider is what activities you perform. These will dictate whether or not you need to apply for crop scope of certification only, or if you will need to add the handling and processing scope of certification. The crop scope would be for producers who are growing only on-site mushrooms and selling only those mushrooms. They may be raw or lightly processed, so such as dried, but they could not use any off-farm ingredients in the final product as sold. Whereas the handling scope of certification would be needed if you are further processing your mushrooms using off-site ingredients. So if you're making a tincture and you need to purchase a carrier oil, for example, that would require handling scope of certification. Or if you're sourcing another organic operations mushrooms, like OGC was mentioning earlier, they are a distributor, they're a buyer and a seller. Or if you purchase another organic mushrooms product, combine it with your own on-farm grown products, and then sell that mixed lot, that also would require the handling scope of certification. So whichever scope is appropriate for your activities, this will determine which OSP should be submitted for review to your respective certifier. The OSP is a series of documents that will outline every aspect of your operation, the activities performed from top to bottom, the inputs used, and then the records that will be maintained. And in order to become certified, that OSP must be one that is agreed upon by both the producer and the certifier. I'm going to be focusing on just the crop scope of certification during this presentation, but you can check out an example of the handler OSP on our website, and there's a link I've provided there. So every certifier has also developed their own individual organic system plan forms. So another certifier's OSP will differ from OTCO's forms, so that's something to keep in mind. But they're all designed to ensure that there's a consistent enforcement of the regulation. So let's dive in a little bit to the crop OSP. The OSP is going to cover everything from your land history information, if outdoor production is utilized, or your facility information for indoor production. All associated maps and flowcharts should also be included. It goes into seeds and planting stock. And in the case of mushrooms, this is the section where we use to discuss spawn. So this is that overlap between, the NOP regulation is formed for crops, but we're talking about mushrooms here. So we look to that section of the standard for that. Soil and crop fertility management, pest and weed disease management, natural resources and biodiversity, your harvest practices, any post-harvest practices you may perform, storage and transport, labeling and sales, your contamination prevention section of your OSP. This is going to be anything from the equipment that's used to adjacent land management or practices that are employed when both organic and conventional production occurs on site. It's also going to include a list of all inputs and materials that are used in production. So this is going to include all your growing media and all of your substrates, for example. And lastly, but most importantly, the OSP covers any records that will be maintained. So this is a crucial aspect for certification because this is what shows a certifier and in turn the NOP that the approved OSP is being followed and that the regulation is being met. Well, let's take a look at what should be considered for the different types of production systems. So for indoor production systems, the facility would have an impermeable floor to meet this requirement. And any treated wood that may be used in the facility construction, it must not come into contact with the organic product. So those are two items to keep in mind if you're doing indoor production. For outdoor production, the land that is to be certified must be free of prohibited substances for the last 3 years. We call this the land history. So no prohibited synthetic seed treatments, fertilizers, or herbicides have been applied for 3 years. And there must be records available to verify this. So there needs to be records for the last 3 years for your land history, your all land activities. The requirement also applies to land. The land history requirements also apply if you're wild harvesting mushrooms. And if you are wild harvesting mushrooms, in addition to these land history requirements, those practices, the harvesting practices, could not be environmentally destructive And we'd want to ensure that those practices are such that they sustain the continued growth and production of that wild crop. Let's talk a little bit about the requirements for spawn. So we look, like I said, we look to the seed section of the regulation for what's required of spawn. And you may hear me use those words interchangeably, seed and spawn. The regulation outlines that certified organic spawn must be used. However, there is a caveat in the regulation that says if the form, quality, or quantity of spawn needed is not available in organic form, a conventional or uncertified spawn may be used. That conventional spawn cannot have been treated with a prohibited substance, and it could not have been produced through genetic engineering. Having said that, something else to consider is that there was a recent NOP guidance that was issued, which states that a ready-to-use spawn is purchased, it must be certified organic. So if you're sourcing an already colonized substrate product, that has to be certified organic. You don't have that carve out for what we call commercial availability. So now let's take a look at the materials that would be allowed to use. And this would be anything from substrates to growing media to your sanitizers, everything that's used in your production system. The requirements for the materials used in any aspect of your operation are that they must either be non-synthetic or natural, in other words, but not a prohibited non-synthetic or an allowed synthetic. So in the regulation, there's a section that lists out all of the allowed synthetics and prohibited non-synthetics. And we refer to that as the national list. And I've provided a link here for you guys to check that out later. Remember, though, that all of your materials, all individual products you want to use must be submitted to your certifier for review. So your certifier is generally the one that determines if something meets the criteria as being non-synthetic. So we would take that on as a review. So the questions to ask yourself when you're deciding if you're interested in pursuing a product is it non-synthetic? Is it a prohibited non-synthetic? If it's synthetic, is it listed on the national list as being okay to use? And then once you've determined that, you can submit it to your certifier for review before you use it. Now let's take a look at a few of the common materials that are used in mushroom production. So if a wood product is used, anything from sawdust to wood log, it must be from raw, unpainted wood. It cannot contain any prohibited additives. So an example of an allowed non-synthetic wood product would be a sawdust block that has been verified to not have any synthetic glues in it. If a beeswax is used, it cannot have any prohibited additives. This is another example of an allowed non-synthetic. If a microcrystalline cheese wax is used, we must be able to verify that it has no synthetic polymers and no synthetic colors in it. This would be an example of an allowed synthetic, which you would find listed on the national list for mushroom production. Any manures, grains, or roughagages that are used must not contain prohibited additives. And note that agricultural products, so your roughagages and your grains, they do not need to be certified organic to be okay to use. You're allowed to use a conventional uncertified grain or straw, for example. If a compost is used, we must review all of the feedstocks. So whatever stuff you're adding to your compost pile, those feedstocks must either be non-synthetic or allowed synthetics. So for example, if newspaper is listed on the national list as an allowed synthetic compost feedstock, but we would need to verify that it contains no glossy or colored inks, since that's included in the description for the kind of synthetic paper that can be used. If the compost contains any manure, there must be composting records available to show that the pile has been mixed and managed according to the regulation and has reached a minimum of 131 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 3 consecutive days. when a mineral is used, so gypsum or chalk, they must have been naturally mined, not chemically altered during processing, so no calcination, for example, no extreme heat, and they must also not contain any prohibited additives.
Does this also apply to the lime in like lime pasteurization? Because
Yep,
that is an extreme heat process technically. So
exactly. So limestone for soil amendment purposes would need to be non-synthetic, so not calcined. But a hydrated lime is allowed to be used, I believe, for a crop, like a pesticide use. So the intent of the use is important also to distinguish, but hydrated lime would not be allowed in this instance. So if you're growing your own mycelium, that growing media must also be reviewed as an input or allowed material. So for agar, it must have been produced from naturally occurring aquatic plants and cannot contain any prohibited additives. And for this part, there's something to consider. If the agar you're using is synthetic, because I'm not sure how many non-synthetic agars are readily available in the marketplace. The subsequent mycelium would be considered conventional, but remember that there's that carve out in the regulation that does allow for the use of conventional seed when organic seed is not commercially available. So in this case, if you're using a synthetic agar, you would essentially be your own supplier or source of conventional seed. So as long as you can demonstrate that that particular mycelium is not available in the organic quality, quantity, or form you need, you'd be approved to use that, even though synthetic agar would be considered a prohibited material. Material reviews would also extend to anything used in post-harvest practices. If a chlorine was used in direct contact with mushrooms, the residual levels must meet the Safe Water Drinking Act. And lastly, all sanitation materials used in the facility or on any piece of equipment are subject to review and must be approved as applicable. All right, I realize that was a little bit of a dense presentation and we covered a lot, but hopefully you guys will find the PowerPoint useful in going back for references. And you can dive into those links that I've provided a little bit as well. And hopefully that sparks a couple of questions for you guys. And we're always here to help. So feel free to reach out to us at Oregon Tilth anytime. And we'll do our best to answer any questions that come up. And I'll go ahead and open it up to questions or any comments you guys might have.
I dropped a couple of questions in the chat window. So one was about the outdoor cultivation and the land history requirements. And I was curious if that is applied to the entire lot as owned or only the area that mushroom production is ongoing. For example, like I'm looking to lease some land from a farmer, and of course I would need to build up multiple years to get the full 3-year history, but does the requirement apply to the whole lot that the landlord owns, or can it be applied to just the area that we are growing our organic mushrooms?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's whatever land you are asking us to certify. So you could look at that a couple of different ways. It doesn't need to be the whole, say, acre, but maybe the 1/4 acre that you're going to be growing your mushrooms on. The other thing to point out here is that it doesn't need to be under your management for those 3 years. We just need to be able to verify with the records the last 3 years. So if the landowner has those for the last 3 years, it doesn't need to be under your management for 3 years.
Okay. And I had one more question. This one was regarding indoor grows. So occasionally we'll do, a deep clean on the grow room, and there's, they use chemical cleaners oftentimes. And if these chemicals do not come in contact with mushrooms, do they still need to be on the the approved lists?
If it's not going to come into direct contact with the mushrooms or handling equipment, like so your tables or anything like that. Possibly not. Otherwise, what we would require is a rinse after, a clean water rinse after.
Okay.
We would call those a no contact sanitizer.
Okay.
Mhm.
So just eliminate all vectors of potential contact, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But they would still need to be disclosed, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I had a question regarding the certification of spawn in conjunction with the mushroom certification. Since I would suspect a lot of us will be producing our own spawn, is that just another component to the certification process when you're going through it, certifying your spawn and mushrooms?
Yeah, I would, if you were producing your own and every step along in the process met the organic regulation, I would end up putting spawn on your certificate, even if it's not the end product you're selling.
Okay.
If mushrooms would also be on there as your certified crop, but I would go ahead and add that to your certificate, because then you're your own supplier of organic spawn, or
Okay.
subsequent, you may be a conventional supplier. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
To kind of clarify on that, what you were saying about like the seeds, if they weren't available, so were you saying that, I guess, if spawn wasn't available for purchase, that we could colonize our own grains that were conventionally grown, and you would certify that as organic?
No, that if it didn't meet the organic requirement, we wouldn't put it on the certificate, but you would be allowed to use it as long as you can show the commercial availability, which is that it wasn't available in the form, quality, or quantity that you needed.
So we could still use it, even though it was grown on conventional grains, if we can prove that spawn wasn't available for purchase, not organic grains.
I think I misunderstood the first part of your question. So you can use conventional grain or conventional roughage or whatever you need, and that end product, that'll still be certified organic. What might not be, so that isn't going to be a conventional product. You're allowed to use conventional roughages or grains and them still be organic.
Interesting.
I mean, the underlying thing with the grain is organic grain in a lot of cases is substantially more expensive. I mean, to almost an unbelievable extent than conventional grains. So, I mean, from a production standpoint, your grain spawn is going to have a large take on your finished profitability. So utilizing conventional grains would be advantageous. But
absolutely. But as a consumer, I think that they're generally under the impression that it was holistically grown on organic substances.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it makes sense. I was just kind of talking out loud to a certain extent.
No, I hear you though. I mean, as a small scale producer, it seems advantageous for sure.
Yeah, and what hearing Brian's quotes on price per pound, the profitability comes into question pretty fast.
Also, who would verify that the agar is derived from seaweed or the quality of the sawdust pellets?
Mm-hmm. So every certifier handles, we call them material reviews. Every certifier handles those slightly different. At OTCO, we'll take those reviews on. So all we would need from you is a product label and a manufacturer's name. And then we dive in. We would reach out to them and ask for that information. I do know other certifiers put the onus on the client, so you guys to gather that information. So it would be emailing out to the manufacturer and trying to gather that information. Surprisingly, we don't have a lot of manufacturers that are not willing to disclose that to us. That information remains confidential to Oregon Tilth only. We don't disclose that to you even. So we do have that confidentiality policy, which I think helps.
Quite a bit easier going with Oregon Tilth on material reviews than trying to get it yourself as an individual. Our experience, even as a larger company, is that folks are reluctant to give out any kind of proprietary information, regardless of who you are. But because of Tilth's reputation and how they handle it, it's been a lot easier for them to get through that process. It's just my 2 cents worth.
And Morgan, this is Heidi. For compost, if you're purchasing compost, then would you need to get the records from whoever's making that compost on the feedstocks that they've used and like the process?
Yep, it'd be the same thing, just like the sawdust, is we would reach out to the producer, the manufacturer of that compost. Sorry, I think my dog found a squirrel in the back. Sorry about that. And we would reach out and ask for all of that information, a full list of their feedstocks, make sure all of those are non-synthetic, and then the full composting records we would get. I do want to make a plug here for OMRI, Organic Material Review Institute. They are a material review organization that is accredited by the NOP. And so fertilizer, pesticide companies can submit their products to OMRI for review and listing. OMRI has a public list of allowed products that organic farmers can use. And so if a product was already listed with OMRI, we would approve it. We wouldn't have to review it at all. So there is that. WSDA is another accredited material review organization, but those are the only two. Oh, CDFA is also okay. So many acronyms.
And real quick, don't want to backtrack too far. What we were just talking about with the grains, that can't be applied to stuff like wheat bran or soy hulls.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It can be conventional, as long as we can confirm after harvest there haven't been any prohibited additives applied to it.
Absolutely.
So sometimes diatomaceous earth may be added. We want to look at that. So we would look at all of it, but you still could use a conventional one.
Wow. And real quick, you said like for the land use thing, it was 3 years. I don't know if you're familiar with like the horticultural certifications. Is it 3 years for the land use for regular horticulture stuff? I see Heidi nodding.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I just was curious.
Oh, you mean for just crop producer certification? Is that what you're referring to? Then yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I got. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Morgan, thank you so much for sharing all of this excellent information. I was curious if you could share, are there any common hiccups that folks who are trying to certify their mushroom production as organic encounter?
I'm by no means a mycologist. I think along the way, I probably learned more from you guys during the certification process, quite frankly, or the certification of mushroom process. And so I think it's not necessarily a hiccup. I look at it as a positive thing, but I think you may have to, we were talking earlier about you guys being so specialized in this field. There may be a learning curve. So kind of helping us to understand the process, as long as you guys are open to that. I think, we're all trying to work together, but I can't recall any specific hiccups that have come up for the producers that we have. Land history on a wild harvest mountainside cannot be easy to get. That's come up before. But nothing in particular. It's always been smooth sailing other than that.
Awesome, thank you. We've got a couple of minutes left. Does anyone else have any questions for Morgan right now?
Yeah, sorry. Do you know if you could get like certified through the USDA to sell organically if you were growing on conventional supplements?
What do you mean the conventional?
Like non-organic soy hulls and grains?
So the USDA isn't, I'm not sure if I understand the question, but so the USDA won't be the ones that actually certify anybody. It's always these accredited, these independent third-party certifiers. But if your substrates, your ag products do not need to be conventional or do not need to be organic. They can be conventional.
Trying to think of like what's the more popular organic certifier, I guess.
Well, in Oregon we have ODA. They also do organic certification. So there's state agencies, nonprofits, and then for-profits.
Okay, so I mean, I guess what you guys require is the same as the ODA?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Thank you.
All of these standards are for organic certification in general, and wouldn't be up for debate by any other organic certifier.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Morgan, for clarification, right? I mean, if you're certified by Oregon Tilth, ODA, California certifiers, like then you could have USDA organic, like you could use that label.
You could use that seal, the USDA organic seal on your product, correct?
Okay.
So all of the certifiers, use the same, the organic standards.
That makes a bit more sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Morgan. And you did say that we can email you questions as they come up. Is that correct? I think we have your email linked in our agenda for today. And thank you so much for your time and sharing all of that information. It is a lot. And it can be quite a bit to go through, but I think you did an excellent job and gave us all a better understanding of the program. So thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Awesome. Another one of the topics that came up on our survey of things that people wanted to learn more about was the OSU Extension Small Farm Program. And I've had the pleasure of working with Heidi this summer. And so I will turn it over to you, Heidi, to give us kind of an overview of the program. And then there's an opportunity for questions. And if you have any questions during Heidi's presentation or discussion, feel free to put them in the chat.
Excellent. Thank you, Em. And thank you all for being here and Morgan for sharing. And one of the things that we do with the Small Farms program is to bring producers together and like to share their priorities and then developing programming through that. So worked with Em and was like, there's a lot of need for, mushroom growers in the region. And it was like, well, let's see if we can get a network together. So that's one of the things that the OSU Small Farms program can do. And I'm Heidi Noordijk. The J in my last name is silent. And I work with the Small Farms program in Oregon, part of a statewide team. We have people, Southern Oregon, the South Willamette Valley, Mid Willamette Valley, sometimes Central Oregon. And I'm going to share my screen and feel free to pop questions in the chat. So I am part of the Metro Area Small Farms program, and it's actually Em and I are the two people right now in the Metro Small Farms program, and my colleague Clint Taylor that works one day a month with us. And so what's the Metro area is Clackamas County, Multnomah County, and Washington counties, and part of the Center for Small Farms and Community Food Systems. And we serve small scale farmers in this area. So a lot of people are like, well, what is considered a small farmer? And most of the farmers that we work with they are selling like farm direct through a CSA to specialty grocery stores, restaurants, or through farmers markets. And so we provide a lot of resources, educational opportunities to help these farmers improve their sustainability, both environmentally and economically, and just bring farmers together. Also, we do a lot of work with like appropriate scale production. Some of the areas that I focus on is beginning farmer education, looking at small scale production. We've done a lot of vegetable variety trials, especially with organic vegetables. We do farm direct marketing, help support farmer networks like this mushroom network here, providing like a Zoom room, or if you're like, we would really like this speaker to come to Oregon, we could have a session at the Small Farms Conference in Corvallis with a speaker from anywhere in the country. And then we also work closely with Nick Andrews. He's the organic vegetable specialist for Extension and used to be the metro area extension agent. And he does a lot of work on organic farming. So the smallfarms.oregonstate.edu is our website, and there's information on business planning. One of our most popular publications is What Can I Do with My Small Farm? That helps you walk through different things. A lot of that is focused on, like starting a farm outdoors. We don't have a lot of mushroom resources. We're trying to figure out, is there someone at OSU in the botany and plant pathology department that is working with mushrooms? There's a fair amount of folks like in forestry in that realm, but Oregon State right now, there's not a lot of support for cultivated mushroom research and projects. But this network could help bring, hey, there's a need here. Let's see if we can are there people at OSU right now that can support us? Something else that I've worked on is the Winter Vegetable Project. And there were some growers that were like growing year round and wanting to sell at some of the winter farmers markets, and farmer market managers were like, hey, we would love to have more vegetable vendors. So a group of us got together, and Lane Selman from the Culinary Breeding Network, we had a 3-year grant to develop Oregon's winter vegetable markets. And we had different tastings. We did variety trials, brought the public together. So there would be events. This was pre-COVID, where at the Red, it's an event center that EcoTrust runs in inner Southeast Portland. And we'd have like 750, 1,000 people there. We had chefs that were preparing like some of these different vegetables, recipe sharing. People could try and taste, get feedback. And then we also had farmer vendors there that were selling those vegetables in that same space. As people were testing them, they could get the recipe, go buy some of those. So, thinking broadly, like, is this a way to, is there a way that we could increase the education of consumers on mushrooms and connect, like producers with consumers, market managers, buyers, chefs, all in that same space. And then there's also in Portland, OSU Small Farms supports the Green Thumb Urban Farm. There's cultural crop trials. There was an urban farm apprenticeship program happening there. And then Black Futures Farm is also based there. So we do a lot of support for organizations that are working with beginning farmers, helping to, we'll teach some classes. Our Center for Small Farms and Community Food Systems, they'll help to write grants that support some of these programs. And then we help share curriculum and also bring in speakers if they're interested in having like specific experts or specific experienced folks that can come and share that information. Another project we worked on looking at scale appropriate equipment and infrastructure, we built a demonstration packing shed. Like somebody's has like 2 acres. What is the basic equipment that they need to get started, and then how could it be expanded on. So we worked with, there's a farmer and a consultant, Josh Volk. He's based in the Portland area. He's also a mechanical engineer, and he helped us design he designed some equipment for like ergonomics and just layout, thinking about those things. We also have some online classes. So there's one, it's called Growing Farms, Successful Whole Farm Management. And I don't have the book with me. The team also put a book together that is like a companion textbook for that class. And then we've developed some short courses like ecological strategies for managing insects on a farm. There's a pasture and grazing workshop, and then also an organic nutrient management course. And more of those are like one's coming out on seed saving. So thinking in the future too, perhaps there could be one on like mushroom cultivation. Small Farm School, that is coming up. That's at Clackamas Community College in Oregon City on September 12th. And M has been supporting that quite a bit. And Oregon Tilth and Organically Grown Company have also been great supporters over the years to that program. And M has also coordinated a mushroom session there. So Christian's going to be speaking, and Anna, who was with us before, and then Jason from M, can you mic go?
Jason Scott from Feral Fungi.
From Feral Fungi, yep. They're all going to be a panel at Small Farm School talking about their operations. Field to market. So we also will take some information on what are some of the laws that the ODA has on what you can sell value added without a license. Yeah, so there's different information there. And then we can also be like a, communicator. If you have questions like, oh, what is, is there someone from the ODA that we can talk to? Or if there's a list of questions that you'd like, from the ODA on processing or other things, you can put those together, and we can, work with the ODA to put together like a fact sheet of FAQs that would be beneficial for everyone. We also are part of the Oregon Community Food Systems Network. And there's this little short URL right here. It's just a list of resource. I mean, it's not just, it's a list of many of the service providers that support beginning farmers in the state. And there's also there's a brochure, and then there's also a website that has more information where you can click on them. Yeah, so that's like a quick overview of the Metro Area Small Farms Program. And right now it's me, and I get to work with M this summer, and hopefully soon there'll be a second full-time faculty in the area. And I'll stop sharing my screen and open it for any questions that you all have. And just a caveat that I don't have a lot of mushroom experience, but I can connect. Yeah, I'm a connector of people. And I don't know if I said this before. Sometimes I think of myself as like a resource librarian for farmers. Just like you have a question, you can send it. And if I can't answer it, I can reach out to other people who can help answer it, or also like bringing producers together to share information.
That last little list of resources you had, the people who support small farmers, or how exactly do they do that?
Oh, so there's like Adelante Mujeres. They have a regenerative agricultural program in Forest Grove for, it's Spanish language producers and beginning farmers. And then there's some organizations like Northwest Farm Credit Services that they have loans at reduced rate for beginning farmers and producers. And so East Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District, they have an incubator farm, and they have small grants for producers in their district, and Clackamas Community College. So there's like, and if you know of other organizations, it's a dynamic, like it can add, some will go away. So yeah, it's just a list of like Oregon Department of Ag is in there. Oregon Tilth is in there. They have some cost of production programs for small farmers.
Cool. What do you think about like the USDA loans and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, you're going to be at Small Farm School, and there's going to be someone there from Farm Service Agency and also the NRCS to talk about some of the loans that they offer. And so like Farm Service Agency are the folks to talk to and just like getting started with the paperwork. And there are definitely, yeah, like advantages to be able to get a USDA loan, and like each business is unique. And so the best thing to do is like to, contact them, and they'll say, this might be the best route for you to take. And the USDA also has some grant programs that can be helpful. Yeah. Do you have a connection at USDA or Farm Service Agency?
I have talked to a few people at both of those organizations in the last year or so, trying to prepare for essentially our 3-year mark that makes us eligible.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they've been super helpful about what they're going to want when that comes. I mean, as far as like a business plan and tax returns and all that stuff. So they've been super helpful.
Yeah. And like other things that like the statewide small farms team has done is we'll get like a frequently asked question. There might be something where we have farmers that are like, how much should I charge for this? How much should I charge for my tomatoes or for my eggs? And it was like, how much should I charge for my products? So a group of us got together. We worked with an ag economist also to put together a publication on like, here are considerations to think about. And the answer is there is no right answer, because it depends on that. But and then like we have a new egg publication, because a frequently asked question was, what do I need to have? What does my egg label need to contain if I'm selling without a license? And it was like, okay, we'll put together, a publication on that. So like those are, some things too. So if there's like big questions like that, and then what I'm coming back around to on our website, we did put together like a business planning page under resources. And there's there's information in there just about like writing a business plan. And then we also worked with some partners and asked them like, at banks or Northwest Farm Credit, some of the apprenticeship programs, like what are you all looking for from farmers in a business plan? And most of them said, it really depends on the situation. And the best thing to do is to call them and just the first thing, call them and have a conversation, and they can say, oh, here's the paperwork that you should have. Or like Christian, you're like, okay, 3 years, I'm getting this plan together, but you know what you need to have at that time.
You said you and Em are starting some stuff in the metro area. What do you envision that turning into?
Well, this is what we're doing right now. It's kind of like looking at a producer-driven network. So it's like, Em produces mushrooms, and I'm like supporting that just to kind of bring people together and find out what are the priority areas. And then we can go from there. Is it like people want to have tours of different operations? And then one of the things in the survey was, okay, we want to hear from a organic certifier. So bringing in Oregon Tilth. So like bringing in speakers. So just like listening to what you all are looking for, and like providing spaces like meeting rooms or whatever too, or bringing in food. For just people to come together and talk and share with each other, like a learning collective.
Sweet.
Awesome. Thank you, Heidi. Does anyone have any other questions for Heidi?
Oh, but I'll give a plug because it's an incredible resource for people with questions, and they've been very supportive to many successful farmers. The programs that they've put together are great. So the OSU Small Farm School, yay! We love what you're doing.
And there are volunteer opportunities for Small Farm School as well. So if anyone is interested in volunteering, please reach out to me. And for 4 hours of volunteer service, you can get your entire registration comped. And you can go to Christian, Anna, and Jason's mushroom production class or any other class. Like Heidi mentioned, there's some good information around funding. And some pretty exciting things there in terms of like funding your small farm dream. I know is one of the sessions at the conference as well. So awesome. Thank you, Heidi. And with that, I think we'll kind of go into what our next steps are. And let me see if I'm sharing my screen. Here we go. Cool. Yeah, so put together this Google Drive, which hopefully you'll have access to. I had a little bit of an issue with the Google Suite not necessarily accepting everyone's email address. So if you need anything or you didn't find access, then please reach out to me. I did mention earlier that there's this priorities list. And again, you know, this network is for everyone here. I feel very fortunate that I've had the opportunity, time and space with Heidi to kind of cultivate finding folks and connecting folks with this. But, you know, we're only as strong as everyone's participation, right? So if y'all have some things that you are really interested in, I would encourage you to put them underneath the priorities, and then maybe those become some of our conversation topics for our future meetings. I will put a little plug in as well. There's a link for your logos and for your photos. And this is me selfishly asking if you have any interest in being part of the OSU Extension Showcase. As part of my internship this summer, I'm putting together an extension showcase, which is just going to highlight this mushroom producer network. And so it's just an opportunity for you to get your name out there, or you know, any cool mushroom production photos that you may have. I think one of the coolest things about growing mushrooms and about growing food is that it's so uniquely beautiful. Sometimes we talk about we sell clusters as they are, and then we weigh them out for people because each mushroom cluster is its own beautiful piece of art, and we don't want to break those up sometimes. So feel free to add your photos in there. I think that'd be pretty cool. Yeah, and then I just wanted to open it up to the group that we have here and talk about what do the next steps look like for this learning community. How often would you want to meet? Is there a certain platform that works best for you? And is anyone interested in hosting the next meeting? So I'll kind of throw those questions out to the group. Maybe we start with, is there a discussion platform that works best for everyone?
Well, so I have experience. Most people are on Facebook, it seems, although it's becoming less popular as time goes on. But there are several mushroom growing groups on Facebook, and none of the ones I've found have been particularly local, let's say. But I'd be curious if anybody would be interested or willing to join a Facebook group for this local, Oregon Mushroom Producers Network, so that we could just, Facebook is a decent platform for, say, off the cuff asking a question. And if you have a large enough pool of people in this group, then somebody can answer. And these are questions, I mean, they could be technical questions about, let's say substrate prep or pH, but it could also be, where are, good places to get, hardwood shavings or something like that. Like I recently found a flooring manufacturer by us that it doesn't do anything with their planer shavings, for instance. So, it'd be a good place to share and ask questions. I know there's other platforms like Discord or setting up a WordPress forum or something like that. But would anybody be interested in a Facebook group for this?
I think your idea is spot on with what we need. I would just think that it shouldn't happen on Facebook or Instagram, personally.
Okay.
I mean, I think for most groups, you do need an account to, I'm not sure. I don't really use Facebook that often. I could go on and on why I don't choose to use social platforms. But if there was any way to do it beyond that, that would be preferable to me, at least. Even a private website or something like that, like where we could introduce a blog or a forum or something like that.
Okay.
But that's just me.
Yeah, I totally understand the preference for non-social media based as well. So I could look into what it would take to set up a WordPress forum or something like that.
Also, Google Sites is a free platform, and they might have like a blog in there or something. That could be something that we look into, especially through our shared drive.
Yes. I mean, I like how, I like how the shared drive thing is going. I mean, I think it makes it like really personable, and we can all communicate really well and one-on-one. And I mean, I don't know, I guess it could be like that on Facebook too, but the way the Google Drive has been going is really great.
And there could also be, like, Em already has now like an email contact list of people that are interested. Yeah, there could be maybe like a Google mail list where announcements could get sent out or other things. Just trying to figure out like what would be most accessible to people and not where it's like overwhelming. Like, oh my gosh, I'm getting like 25 emails a day. Like, I like the idea of like a blog or a site where people could, like go in on there. And if they wanted to get notifications, they could get notifications. But that's something, that can be explored.
And then what do folks think of like a monthly meeting? Is that often enough? Too often? What do y'all think?
Yeah, monthly or bi-weekly to me seems like a good cadence.
And then is anyone interested in hosting our next meeting?
I suppose I could bite the bullet on this one and say that I'll host the next one.
Okay.
I'd be more inclined if it was in person.
Okay.
I'm not great with the computers and stuff.
No worries. And that's something that we can explore too if folks are interested in doing in-person meetups as well. I think,
farm tours would be really cool as well. So
I'm sorry, Harrison, what'd you say?
Farm tours would be really cool as well as far as in-person meetings go. And then, it prevents multiple, tours from needing to take place or anything too.
Yeah, I really like that idea of like, just if there's people that want to host and have like a little, walk through their operation, and then there can be just sharing in topics and sometimes potlucks. Just bringing people together and Yeah.
I'd
feel
be
like-
totally down to host here sometime.
That'd be great.
And Christian, what would be a good time, yeah, for you to host?
If we're gonna try to set that up, and I'd have to figure out exactly how many people we'd have here. I'd have to look into my schedule. It would probably be on a Thursday, Saturday, or Sunday. But if we want it to happen sooner than later, it could probably happen by the end of September.
Okay. And Harrison, how about you?
I'm happy to do something, say, in a month or so. We could do it in person, although our operation is pretty small. So, it would have to be a smaller number of people. I mean, the number of people that we have on the call today would fit easily, but I'm also open to, opening up a discussion as well as for online discussion. So, it makes it more accessible for people's schedules sometimes if they don't have to drive across town in rush hour or what have you. So,
Right.
So I'm
And
kind of hearing like both options might work. So maybe we aim for looking at the end of September for Christian hosting a tour, as well as Harrison hosting an online format. And then maybe some folks can do both, maybe some folks can do one or the other, but then it allows us to continue these conversations.
Okay, and that sounds good. And as people come together, I think organically, I use that intentionally, things will develop of like, oh yeah, maybe there's like a series, like every other month there's a tour, and then the opposite month it's like a Zoom meeting, or a tour of a farmer's market, talking with market managers on what are they looking for. Great, thanks, Em.
Yeah, I'll just put it out there. I'm available. I'm here all the time. And I'm an open book for resource for anybody if there's any questions that you guys might have just about the marketplace, what we're seeing out there, future crystal ball type stuff, whatever. And I would encourage, especially with a group this size, if there are a few other people that get involved, if you guys can't figure out, if you're all using the same kind of substrates and you're all using the same kind of amendments, there's power in numbers as far as being able, purchasing power, I'm saying. So if eventually something comes up where you're all working towards one purchase, that can be really helpful. And actually, that's the way OGC started. I mean, we started just because one farmer couldn't do 50 pounds of gypsum at a time. So, it's just a matter of figuring out the cooperative way to share if there is that ability. I think it could benefit everybody, especially at the scale that you guys are at right now.
Brian, real quick, did you guys start in Oregon?
Yeah, we were, I think, incorporated in 1985 for the first, and then I've been with the company since '94, and we've always been in Oregon. We started in Eugene, and now we're in Portland, Eugene, Seattle, and Spokane.
Awesome. Well, I want to respect everyone's time. I want to say thank you so much for great conversations and everyone who was able to participate today. And the recording will go up in our Google Drive. So anyone who wasn't able to make it to this meeting will at least have access to it. And I look forward to working with y'all in the future. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thanks, Brian, Jay, Harrison, Chris, and M for bringing us all together.
All right, until next time.